The twin moons hung high above the shining alien city of Velix Prime, their silver light gliding over towers made of glass and stone. In the heart of that city stood the Vielle estate, a floating mansion built from rare crystal mined from dying stars. Its walls shimmered faintly in the night, glowing with quiet pride. The owner of this grand home, Zoran Vielle, was no ordinary alien. He was one of the richest beings in 3 galaxies, a man whose name could make worlds tremble. Everyone believed Zoran was away on a trade mission to the outer colonies. His return wasn't expected for many weeks. So when a silent ship broke through the clouds that evening, glowing with the Vielle family crest, the mansion's guards were confused. None of them had received any message. The landing pad lit up and the ship's doors opened with a hiss. Out stepped Zoran Vielle himself. He moved like a shadow, tall and proud, his long coat brushing the floor. His skin was silver blue, his eyes bright like molten gold. Every step he took echoed through the silent halls as the automatic lights flickered on. The mansion should have been empty except for a few service drones, but something was wrong. He could hear faint noises. Zoran paused near the grand staircase. There, that sound again. It wasn't the hum of machines or the whisper of wind through the crystal walls. It was softer, human. Someone was humming. And underneath that there was a small laugh, a child's laugh. His heart tightened. His daughter? Impossible. Lyra never laughed. Since her mother's death 2 years ago, she had become quiet, pale, and distant. Zoran had hired the best doctors in the galaxy, but nothing helped. She barely spoke to him, let alone smiled. So who was she laughing with now? He followed the sound, his boots silent against the smooth floor. The mansion was huge, filled with long corridors and glowing windows that looked out into the endless night sky. The laughter came from the lower hall, the hall where servants worked. Zoran's brows furrowed. Why would his daughter be there at this hour? He descended the staircase slowly, his mind full of questions. He passed the portraits of his ancestors, proud and cruel faces carved in silver frames. He passed the empty banquet hall, the kitchen full of cleaning drones, and then reached the corridor that led to the janitor's quarters. The sound was clearer now. Fold it this way, see? Then the star shines when you hold it to the light. Zoran froze. The voice was deep and gentle, not alien, not metallic, human. He looked around the corner. In the center of the glowing hall, a human man knelt on the floor, mopping it carefully. He was tall, his uniform worn from work, but his eyes were calm and kind. Beside him sat a small alien girl, Zoran's daughter, Lyra. Her pale green hair was tied back, her hands sticky with glue and bits of paper. The janitor showed her how to fold a small 5-pointed star from silver paper. She laughed again as he made a funny mistake and the paper tore. For a long moment, Zoran could not move. He had seen humans before, hundreds of them. They were everywhere on Velix Prime, doing low work no alien wanted. Most were rough, silent, and broken by labor. But this one smiled. He didn't act afraid or greedy. He looked at the little girl like she was someone precious, not a rich man's child. Lyra clapped her hands. It looks like the stars outside? The janitor chuckled softly. Yes, but these ones are ours. You can hold them in your hand. Zoran's golden eyes darkened. His daughter was not supposed to be here, and no human was supposed to speak to her without permission. Yet the scene before him felt strange, almost sacred. For the first time in years, he saw his child alive with joy. Still, anger began to rise inside him. Who gave this human the right to touch his daughter's heart like this? To enter her loneliness when even her father could not? He stepped forward silently, the light catching the edge of his coat. His reflection flashed across the crystal walls as he approached. The janitor's back stiffened as if sensing something behind him. He turned slowly and froze when he saw who stood there. Zoran Vielle, the billionaire. The ruler of the house. Lyra's eyes widened. Father? Zoran's voice came out calm but cold. What is happening here? The janitor lowered his head quickly, bowing. Sir, forgive me. She couldn't sleep. Zoran raised a hand, silencing him. His gaze moved between the man and the little girl. Lyra's face fell, her small hands trembling as she held the paper star. The air grew heavy. The mansion, once filled with laughter, became silent again. Zoran turned slowly toward his daughter and said, in a voice that made the walls hum, Go to your room. As the girl obeyed, clutching her star, Zoran's eyes returned to the human. In them burned a question he could not yet ask. Who are you to bring light into my house? And that was how the night began. The night the richest alien in the galaxy came home early and found something he never expected. The heavy silence after Zoran's command lingered long after Lyra's small footsteps faded up the stairs. The glowing walls reflected her disappearing shadow, leaving only the tall alien and the humble human standing in the middle of the hall. Ethan, the janitor, lowered his gaze, gripping the mop handle tightly. He could feel the alien billionaire's golden eyes burning into him like fire. Zoran finally spoke, his voice sharp but steady. You work here as a cleaner, not a storyteller. Why were you talking to my daughter? Ethan swallowed hard. Sir. She couldn't sleep. She was wandering near the kitchen. I just wanted to help her calm down. By folding paper? Zoran's tone was dripping with disbelief. You thought that was your duty? Ethan looked up for the first time. His voice was quiet but honest. No, sir. That was just kindness. The words echoed through the crystal hall like a strange wind. Kindness. It was such a small human word, yet it felt almost forbidden in this mansion. Zoran had built empires through logic, power, and control. Never kindness. He stared at Ethan longer than he should have, trying to understand the calm in his eyes. You're dismissed for the night, Zoran said coldly, and I will decide in the morning if you still work here. Ethan bowed silently and gathered his things. As he left, he glanced once toward the staircase where a small green-haired girl watched from the shadows, her eyes full of worry. Upstairs, Lyra sat on her bed, clutching the silver paper star in her hands. Her heart was racing. She had been scared of her father's anger, but even more scared that Ethan would never come back. No one else had ever spoken to her like that, not since her mother died. Everyone treated her like something fragile or royal, not like a normal child. But Ethan had laughed with her, taught her songs from Earth, and told her stories about a blue sky she had never seen. She whispered to the star, "Please come back tomorrow, Mr. Ethan." The star didn't answer, but it glimmered faintly in the moonlight. Ethan walked down the service corridor, his heart heavy. He knew what it meant to anger someone like Zoran Vale. Humans like him were lucky to even have jobs on Velix Prime. One wrong move, and he could be sent back to the slums orbiting the city, where the air was gray and the food synthetic. Still, he didn't regret helping the child. He remembered his own daughter, Lily, back on Earth. Her laughter, her small hands folding paper cranes just like Lyra had. The memory hurt, but it also gave him strength. He had come to Velix Prime 5 years ago, one of thousands of human laborers after the war. Most gave up their pride to survive, but Ethan had promised his lost daughter that he'd live with dignity, even if the universe forgot their kind. So he kept working, kept cleaning the same halls where the rich lived, and kept believing that kindness still mattered even here. The next morning, Zoran called for his chief assistant. Find me everything about that human, Ethan Cole. Where he came from, how he got here, everything. Within minutes, a holographic file appeared before him. Ethan Cole, age 36, human male. Widowed. Former mechanical engineer on Earth. Lost family during the Great Invasion. Volunteered for off-world labor to pay debts. Clean record. High performance ratings. Never caused trouble. Zoran frowned. Why is he cleaning floors with an engineer's brain? The assistant hesitated. Humans, sir. No one hires them for more. Zoran dismissed him with a wave, but something inside him shifted. He didn't like admitting it, but the human's courage last night had unsettled him. The way Ethan had spoken, calm, respectful, but unafraid, it was something he rarely saw, even among his own kind. Later that day, Zoran passed through the same hall again. The mop bucket was gone, but on the small service table near the wall he noticed something, a new paper star. This one was slightly different. Its folds neater, and it had a tiny mark in the center. A simple drawing of two hands, one human and one alien, holding each other. Zoran picked it up and stared at it quietly. For a brief moment he thought about Lyra's laughter echoing through the mansion. It was a sound he hadn't heard in years. He set the star down gently, almost carefully, and left the hall without a word. That night, as the mansion's lights dimmed to blue, a small figure sneaked out of her room. Lyra tiptoed down the stairs, holding a tiny flashlight. She found the star sitting on the table and smiled softly. Beside it lay a folded note in rough handwriting. Don't be sad. Every star needs darkness to shine. She didn't know Ethan had written it before leaving, just in case he never returned. In her room, she placed the note beside her pillow and whispered, "Good night, Mr. Ethan." Far away, in the workers' district, Ethan lay in his tiny metal room, staring at the same stars through the dusty window. He didn't know that an alien child in the richest mansion on the planet was looking at the same night sky and thinking of him. And deep inside the Vale estate, Zoran couldn't sleep either. His mind kept returning to that strange human word echoing in his head: kindness. It had been a long time since anyone dared to show him that. Morning sunlight filtered through the mansion's tall crystal windows, scattering into golden beams. It was quiet, too quiet. Servants whispered to one another as they polished corridors and adjusted lights, but everyone felt the tension in the air. The news had spread. The master had returned early, and someone had angered him. Zoran Vale sat in his study, the room filled with glowing documents floating midair. His fingers tapped on the desk, his expression unreadable. But inside, his thoughts were restless. The image of that human man teaching his daughter, laughing with her, as if they shared a bond, refused to leave his mind. It wasn't anger alone that bothered him. It was confusion. How could a human, a servant, a species that still struggled for respect on Velix Prime, reach Lyra in a way that no alien doctor, no elite tutor, and not even her own father could? He rose from his seat, his coat sweeping behind him, and ordered through his intercom, "Bring Ethan Cole to me." In the servant quarters, Ethan froze when he heard his name echo through the speakers. His hands were still damp from scrubbing windows. The guards appeared moments later, their metallic armor glinting under the light. One of them said, "The master wants to see you." "Now." Ethan nodded, wiped his hands, and followed them. His heart pounded in his chest. He had stayed awake most of the night, thinking he would be fired, or worse. Still, he didn't regret helping Lyra. Whatever happened now, at least she had smiled. When the heavy doors opened, Zoran stood by the window, his tall frame outlined by the city's glow. The guards left, and silence filled the room. "Do you know why you're here?" Zoran asked without turning. "Yes, sir," Ethan replied softly. "For crossing a line." Zoran turned around. His golden eyes met Ethan's calm brown ones. "You touched my daughter's heart," he said slowly. "You spoke to her, entered her space, made her laugh." His voice hardened. "Do you think that's your place?" Ethan shook his head. "No, sir, but it wasn't about place, it was about care." Zoran frowned. "Care? For a child who isn't yours?" "Yes," Ethan said quietly, "because no child should grow up afraid of silence." The words struck Zoran like a blade. For a moment, the alien billionaire said nothing. He walked closer, studying Ethan as though trying to see what made him different. "You humans always speak like philosophers," he muttered. "But when it comes to survival, you serve whoever pays." Ethan didn't argue. "Maybe," he said simply, "but serving doesn't mean forgetting how to feel." That made Zoran pause. His eyes narrowed slightly, curious despite himself. "Where did you learn to speak like that?" "From my daughter," Ethan replied. "Before I lost her?" Zoran blinked. "You have a daughter?" "Had," Ethan said, voice breaking for a second. "She died when Earth fell. I still talk to her sometimes, in my head. Maybe that's why I helped Lyra. She reminded me of my little girl. Same curious eyes." The study grew silent again, the tension between them heavy and fragile. Then, without warning, the door burst open. Lyra ran inside, clutching the paper star. Her eyes glistened with tears. "Don't hurt him," she cried, rushing between Ethan and her father. "He didn't do anything wrong." Zoran's eyes widened. "Lyra, he was nice to me," she interrupted, her voice trembling. "He told me stories about the stars, about people who cared for each other. He made me feel not alone." Zoran froze. He had never seen his daughter this brave, this alive. The little girl who never spoke at dinner was now defending a human servant. The sight filled him with conflicting emotions. shame, anger, and something new he couldn't name. Ethan stepped back slowly. "It's all right, Lyra," he said gently. "Your father's not angry." But Zoran was angry at himself, angry that this human, this outsider, had given his daughter something he hadn't been able to: warmth. He straightened and said coldly, "Leave us." Lyra's lip trembled. "Please, father, now." The girl hesitated, then obeyed, clutching the paper star tightly as she left. Zoran turned back to Ethan, his voice low. "You will pack your things and leave this house by nightfall." Ethan nodded. "Yes, sir." He turned to go, but Zoran spoke again, softer this time. "Why did you sing to her last night?" Ethan stopped. "Because music is the only thing that still feels like home." Then he walked out, leaving Zoran, standing alone, the silence of the mansion pressing around him once more. But this time it wasn't peaceful silence. It was the silence of guilt, of a father realizing that the human he dismissed so easily might have been the one person who truly understood his child. And for the first time in years, Zoran Vale wondered if wealth had made him blind. That night the mansion was silent again, but it was not peaceful silence. It was the kind that hummed with memories, where every corridor seemed to whisper something Zoran didn't want to hear. He sat alone in his grand study, surrounded by floating screens of data. But his mind wasn't on trade reports or galactic profits. It kept drifting back to the image of his daughter clinging to that human, and the way she had said, "He made me feel not alone." Those words gnawed at him. Zoran leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes, but sleep would not come. Instead, he murmured to the mansion's AI, "Replay all security footage from the past 72 hours. Hall Level 3, manual control." The AI's voice responded softly, "Confirmed." A holographic projection filled the air, showing the hall where it had all happened. Zoran watched himself entering angrily the previous night, the human bowing, the child running away. But then he noticed a small timestamp marker on the feed, earlier that evening. He hesitated, then rewound. The screen flickered. The image showed Ethan alone, mopping quietly under the silver chandeliers. Then Lyra appeared, barefoot, wearing her nightdress, holding a small pillow. She looked lost, wandering the empty hall. Ethan noticed her and quickly set the mop aside. "You should be asleep, little one," he said gently. "I can't," Lyra whispered. "The dreams come back." Zoran frowned, leaning closer. Ethan smiled faintly, sitting on the floor beside her. "Then we'll chase them away. That's what my daughter and I used to do. Want to learn how?" She nodded. He tore a piece of cleaning paper and folded it slowly. "When the dreams come, you make stars. Each one holds a good memory. And when you can't find light in your mind, you make your own." The little girl watched him fold carefully. "It's pretty." "It's your star now," Ethan said, handing it to her. "Every time you feel scared, make one more." Zoran's golden eyes softened. The recording showed his daughter laughing as Ethan purposely made silly mistakes. At one point, Lyra offered him juice from the kitchen and tried to teach him alien words, both of them giggling when he mispronounced them. And then, the most shocking part, she sang. A soft alien lullaby echoed in the hall, her fragile voice trembling. Ethan hummed along, matching her tone, blending human and alien notes into one gentle melody. Zoran had not heard his daughter sing since his wife's funeral. He felt something break quietly inside him. When the recording ended, Zoran sat motionless for a long time. The silence returned, but now it carried warmth. The laughter, the music, it lingered in the air. The door opened quietly. Zoran's assistant entered, holding a datapad. "Sir, I've prepared the human's termination papers." Zoran didn't answer. He looked at the man for a long moment and said softly, "Cancel them." "Cancel?" The assistant blinked, confused. "I said cancel them," Zoran repeated, voice sharp now. "And send a message to the maintenance quarters. I want Ethan Cole back tomorrow morning. No security, no warnings." The assistant nodded quickly and left. Zoran turned off the hologram and stood by the window. Outside, the city lights shimmered, like tiny stars. Billions of lives glowing in the dark, not so different from the ones his daughter had folded. He thought of the human word again. Kindness. Something simple, yet powerful enough to bridge worlds. He whispered, "Perhaps that's what we've lost, and what they still have." Meanwhile, in the lower quarters, Ethan sat on his bunk, staring at the single paper star left on his bedside table. He didn't know that Zoran had seen everything. He didn't know that the billionaire who once looked down on him now sat sleepless, humbled by a janitor's quiet compassion. All Ethan knew was that tomorrow would probably bring more work, or the end of it. Still, he wasn't afraid. He had done the right thing. He lay down, whispering softly, "Good night, Lyra." Upstairs in her room, Lyra whispered at the same time, "Good night, Mr. Ethan." The words crossed the silence between them like a secret signal, unheard yet felt. In another room, Zoran stood beside his late wife's portrait, eyes glimmering faintly in the moonlight. "You would have liked him," he said quietly. "He treats her like you did, gently, without expecting anything." He didn't realize his daughter was standing in the doorway, listening. Lyra stepped closer and asked softly, "Will you let him come back, Father?" Zoran looked down at her and something in his hard expression finally cracked. He knelt, brushing her hair gently. "Yes, little one," he said, voice trembling. "He'll come back." And for the first time in years, Lyra smiled, not the forced kind, but one that glowed like morning light. In the distance, the city of Velix Prime kept humming, unaware that something small yet extraordinary had begun in one lonely mansion. Not a trade deal, not a new invention, but the first spark of understanding between two worlds that had long forgotten how to care. The next morning, the richest alien in 3 galaxies would meet a human janitor again, not as master and servant, but as two fathers who both knew what it meant to lose and what it meant to love. Morning sunlight spilled through the wide crystal windows of the Vial mansion, painting the halls in soft gold. The household buzzed with quiet confusion. No one understood why their master, who rarely showed mercy, had ordered the return of the dismissed human janitor. Some whispered that Zoran had lost his temper. Others whispered he had lost his mind. But only one person waited with hope in her small heart, Lyra. She sat by the front gate, clutching the silver paper star Ethan had made her. Her tiny feet swung above the polished steps as she watched the skyport. When the old maintenance shuttle arrived, her face lit up. The door slid open, and there he was, Ethan Cole, still in his simple gray uniform, a faint smile touching his tired face. "Mr. Ethan," Lyra cried, running toward him. He froze in surprise as the little alien girl threw her arms around his leg. He laughed softly, placing a hand on her head. "Hey there, Starmaker," he said. "Didn't think I'd see you again." "You came back," she whispered, as if afraid it was just a dream. "I guess I did," he said gently. "Your father asked me to." Her eyes widened. "Father did?" He nodded. "Said he wanted to talk." Inside the mansion, Zoran waited in the grand hall. When Ethan entered, the alien billionaire stood by the wide staircase, his golden eyes calm but unreadable. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the soft hum of the floating chandeliers. "You came back," Zoran said quietly. "You asked me to, sir," Ethan replied. Zoran studied him carefully. "Yes, I did." He paused, then added, "Last night I watched the security footage." Ethan's heart skipped. "You did?" Zoran's gaze was sharp. "I saw how you treated her. I saw how you made her laugh and how you sang to her." He stepped closer, his tone shifting from authority to something more personal. "You risked everything by breaking the rules of this house. But you did it for her. For my daughter." Ethan didn't speak. He didn't know what to say. Finally, Zoran exhaled. "Tell me why." Ethan met his gaze. "Because loneliness kills slower than any disease, sir." I saw it in her eyes. I couldn't ignore it. Those words hung in the air like a truth no one had dared to say aloud. Zoran turned away, walking toward the window that looked out over the shining alien city. "You humans," he murmured. "You live so short, yet you act as if every second matters. Ethan gave a faint smile. That's because it does. The alien looked back at him silent for a long time. Then for the first time in years, Zoran's voice softened. Sit, he said quietly. Ethan obeyed. Zoran began to speak not as a master but as a man. When my wife died, Lyra stopped talking. She used to sing every morning. After she was gone, she didn't even look at the sky. I buried myself in work thinking I could fix her with money, with doctors, with anything. He paused, eyes distant. But last night I heard her laugh again. You did that, Ethan's throat tightened. She reminds me of my daughter, he said softly. Lily, she loved the stars too. Said they looked like the souls of people watching over us. Zoran listened quietly. He could see the pain in Ethan's eyes, the same pain he had carried in his own heart for years. You've lost too, Zoran said at last. Ethan nodded. Yes, sir. But helping your daughter, it made me feel like maybe I could protect someone again. The alien billionaire was silent for a long while, then spoke words that surprised even himself. You may stay. Not as a janitor, as Lyra's caretaker. Ethan blinked. Caretaker? Zoran nodded. She trusts you. And perhaps, his voice softened further, perhaps I need to learn what she sees in you. Ethan stood stunned. Thank you, sir. Zoran gave a small nod. But remember, this isn't charity. I expect you to teach her, and maybe teach me too. Whatever it is that lets humans keep hope even when they have nothing. Ethan smiled faintly. I'll do my best. Later that day, as the suns dipped low, Ethan sat with Lyra in the garden. The air shimmered with the scent of glowing flowers. She held another piece of silver paper, folding it with small, careful hands. Father said you're staying, she said happily. Ethan smiled. Seems so. She looked up at him. Then you can teach me more Earth songs, he nodded. And maybe you can teach me your people's stars. Above them, the night sky came alive. 2 moons, 1,000 shining lights. And in that quiet corner of the universe, a human and a child of another world sat together, building something invisible but powerful. Not just paper stars, but trust. And somewhere inside the mansion, Zoran Vial watched them from the balcony, a faint smile crossing his face. For the first time in many years, he didn't feel alone. The following evening began quietly. Too quietly. The air above Velix Prime shimmered with distant lightning as a storm brewed far beyond the city dome. Inside the floating Vial mansion, laughter echoed softly from the lower hall. Lyra's laughter. Ethan had just finished telling her another Earth story about rain, something she had never seen. So water falls from the sky? She asked wide-eyed. Ethan smiled. Yes, it makes a sound like whispers on rooftops. It's peaceful. If you listen close enough, she tilted her head. Sounds beautiful. It is, he said softly. Back home, I used to watch it with my daughter. It made the whole world smell clean again. From the balcony above, Zoran stood silently watching the two together. The way Ethan spoke to Lyra, so patient, so gentle, it stirred something old and forgotten in him. He had been powerful for so long that he'd forgotten how simple love could look. But before he could turn away, the lights in the hall flickered. Then, everything went dark. A low rumble shook the floor beneath their feet. Ethan looked up sharply. That's not normal, Zoran's voice echoed from the balcony. Security, he barked. Report status, no reply. Only a strange mechanical whine. The air suddenly grew heavy, charged with energy. Lyra clutched Ethan's sleeve. What's happening? Ethan's instincts kicked in. Stay behind me, then came the explosion. A blinding flash erupted from the eastern corridor, a burst of plasma fire tearing through the walls. Alarms screamed to life. The mansion's AI stuttered. Warning, reactor instability detected. Evacuate immediately. Zoran's eyes widened. The fusion core. It's overloading! He rushed down the stairs, but another shockwave knocked him off balance. Ethan grabbed Lyra and ducked under a fallen beam, shielding her with his body as debris rained down. Smoke filled the hall, glowing orange from the fire. Zoran struggled to his feet, coughing. He could barely see through the haze, but his eyes locked on his daughter, and the human shielding her. For a moment, fear overtook pride. Lyra, he shouted, his voice breaking. I've got her, Ethan yelled back. We need to move now. The floor groaned under them. The crystal panels began to crack, threatening to collapse into the lower levels. Ethan grabbed Lyra in his arms and sprinted toward the service passage. Zoran followed, covering them from behind as flaming debris fell from the ceiling. They reached a sealed security door. Red lights blinked across it. "It's locked," Ethan shouted. Zoran slammed his hand against the scanner. "Override code Val Prime 09. The system buzzed. "Access denied," Zoran cursed under his breath. "The overload scrambled the codes." Ethan scanned the door with quick eyes. Old mechanical lock behind the panel. "I can bypass it. You're a janitor, not an engineer." Zoran snapped. Ethan didn't stop. "I was an engineer once," he muttered, tearing open the side plate and crossing 2 circuits with a metal rod. Sparks flew. The lock hissed. The door slid open. "Move," Ethan ordered, pushing Lyra into her father's arms. "Get her out first." Zoran hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll shut down the manual vent." "It'll buy us time." "Ethan, you'll die down here." Ethan met his eyes. "Then at least she won't." Before Zoran could argue, Ethan turned and ran back into the flaming corridor. He could barely see, his lungs burning with smoke, but he followed the pulsing red glow of the reactor control core. The system was melting down. If it ruptured, it would destroy the entire mansion and everyone inside. He reached the emergency valve, gripping the scorching wheel with both hands. Pain seared through his palms, but he didn't let go. "Come on," he growled, twisting harder. The wheel screeched, finally locking into place. The core's hum softened. The mansion trembled, then steadied. The explosion had been stopped, but the air grew thick with toxic gas. Ethan stumbled backward, coughing violently, his vision blurring. He could hear distant voices shouting his name, but his legs gave way. The world dimmed. Moments later, Zoran burst through the smoke with 2 guards. His eyes widened when he saw Ethan collapsed on the floor, burns covering his arms. He lifted the human himself, ignoring the pain, ignoring the heat, and shouted, "Get us to the med bay." Lyra clung to her father's arm as they carried Ethan out. "Don't let him die, father. Please." Zoran looked down at the man who had saved his daughter twice, once from loneliness and now from death. His throat tightened. "He won't," he promised. "Not while I still breathe." Hours later, the mansion was silent again, only the sound of rain falling against the outer dome. The fire was gone, the danger past. But in the med bay, machines beeped steadily beside a sleeping human. Ethan lay unconscious, bandaged and pale. Zoran stood beside the bed, exhaustion written across his face. Lyra sat nearby, holding Ethan's hand. Her voice was small. "He kept his promise, father. He saved me again." Zoran placed a hand on her shoulder. "And now it's our turn to save him." He looked down at Ethan, the human who had entered his house as a servant and now lay there as something far greater. Not just a worker, not even a friend, something deeper, the bridge between 2 hearts. Between 2 worlds, and for the first time, Zoran Vial bowed his head. In respect. Morning broke softly over Velix Prime. The storm had passed, leaving the sky washed in pale silver light. From the high balcony of the Vale Mansion, the city below sparkled like millions of tiny stars reflecting off wet glass. For the first time in many years, the air smelled clean. Inside the medical chamber, the rhythmic sound of beeping machines filled the room. Ethan lay still, wrapped in soft metallic bandages that shimmered faintly with healing nanites. His chest rose and fell weakly, but he was alive. His hands, burned and scarred, were covered, yet his face carried peace. Zoran stood beside him, dressed not in his usual royal coat, but in a simple tunic. His golden eyes were softer now, no longer cold or proud. He had been there all night, refusing to leave. The medbot announced quietly, "Human patient stable. Neural activity returning to normal range." Lyra, seated beside the bed, gasped, "He's waking up." Ethan's eyes fluttered open. For a moment he blinked, confused, then smiled weakly when he saw Lyra and Zoran standing together. "Still here?" he whispered hoarsely. Zoran gave a small nod. "You saved us, Ethan Cole, twice." Ethan chuckled softly, though his voice was faint. "Guess I'm stubborn." Zoran stepped closer. "No," he said quietly. "You're something rarer than that. You're good." Ethan blinked, surprised. He had never expected to hear those words from an alien billionaire who once treated humans like tools. Zoran looked down for a moment, his voice heavy with sincerity. "When I came home that night, I thought I had caught a thief. A man overstepping his place. But I was wrong. You weren't stealing from me, you were giving something I had already lost." "What's that?" Ethan asked. Zoran met his eyes. "Love." The word hung in the air, quiet and powerful. Lyra reached out and held Ethan's hand. "Father says you're staying forever," she said, smiling. Ethan blinked. "Forever?" Zoran nodded. "If you'll have it. You're no longer my janitor, Ethan. From this day on, you are part of this family. Lyra's guardian. My advisor. My friend." Ethan stared at him in disbelief. "You mean that?" Zoran smiled faintly. "You taught me that worth isn't written in bloodlines or titles. It's proven in the moments when no one is watching. And when my mansion burned, you showed me what kind of man you are. The kind I want beside me." Ethan swallowed hard. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll stay," Lyra said softly. "Please." He looked at her, then at Zoran, and finally nodded. "I'll stay." Days passed. The mansion was repaired, brighter than before. But the change wasn't in the walls, it was in the people. The workers no longer walked in silence. Laughter filled the corridors again. Zoran himself visited the staff quarters now and then, shocking everyone with simple words like "thank you." One evening, he called a gathering in the Great Hall. Reporters from across Velix Prime came to broadcast his announcement. Standing before the glowing banners of his empire, Zoran addressed the galaxy. "For too long," he began, "our kind have looked down on humans as if they were lesser beings, servants, laborers, things to be owned. But today I tell you I was wrong," the crowd murmured in shock. Zoran continued, his voice steady. "One human risked his life to save my child. He reminded me that courage, compassion, and love are not bound to any species. From this moment forward, the Veil Consortium will recognize humans as equals, partners in every sense. A new era begins." Applause filled the hall. Cameras flashed. And standing beside him in simple gray clothes, Ethan Cole bowed slightly, not as a servant, but as a man honored for his heart. When the broadcast ended, Zoran turned to him. "You know what they'll say?" he asked quietly. Ethan grinned. "That you've gone mad." Zoran laughed softly. "Then madness suits me." That night, after the celebration ended, the three of them, Zoran, Ethan, and Lyra, stood on the balcony overlooking the sleeping city. The air was cool and full of stars. Lyra handed Ethan a new silver paper star she had folded herself. "You taught me to make light," she said shyly. "Now it's your turn to keep one." Ethan held it carefully. "I'll never lose it," he promised. Zoran looked at the human beside him and said, almost to himself, "You came into my house as a worker, and left as the man who rebuilt it from the inside." Ethan smiled faintly. "Guess we both came home early, huh?" Zoran's laughter echoed into the night. And far above the glowing city of Velix Prime, the stars shone brighter than ever, somewhere between human warmth and alien light. Bound together not by power or fear, but by the simplest truth of all: kindness can save worlds.